Right, hello and welcome to another Lit Matters. This video will be on an Inspector Calls and specifically trying to analyse the character of Sheila, looking at the importance of Sheila, who is arguably perhaps the most important, the most significant character in the play. It's meant to be a revision video, so I'm assuming you've got some knowledge of the text already and is hopefully of use to you if you've got an exam coming up or you need to be writing an essay on the subject. So let's start at the beginning with Sheila's narrative arc. So this means the important things that happen to that character in the course of the play. Right, so at the very beginning, she's initially quite an unimpressive character. She's spoiled, she's sheltered, and she's superficial. So growing up in this Burling family, she's a well-to-do family, they're not short of money, and she doesn't seem to know very much of the world. She's quite happy, quite confident, but relatively ignorant. She also seems slightly superficial at the beginning. When she gets the ring from Gerald, she likes this sort of shiny object, but says something along the lines of, "Is it the one you wanted me to have?" Almost as if she doesn't know what she wants, and she's happy to be told what to think by the man in her life, by her fiance. Another reason she's perhaps not very impressive at the start is that the way she's treated by those around her, and I guess there's a degree of sympathy generated by Priestley here for her, because she is shaped, like we all are, we're all a product of our environments, but she's shaped by the people around her who her parents talk down to her all the time. They patronize her, they tell her to be quiet if she hasn't got anything important to say, or they encourage her to leave the room when the men are talking. As well as that, she refers to them as mummy, as daddy, almost as if Priestley's suggesting to us that she's quite childish for a young woman. She's not that independent, and she's also a product of patriarchy. I guess that she's there saying, "I'm sorry, Daddy, sorry for not listening," or "Sorry to interrupt," and she's also kind of sleepwalking into this marriage, this sort of status marriage that seems to be perhaps more about the status and the coming together of the Burling company and the Croft company for lower wages and higher prices, as Burling says, rather than for love. So as well as being sort of repeatedly silenced, you can say she is infantilized. She's turned into a little child. The kind of key turning point, perhaps, for Sheila is when the inspector makes her see the error of her ways, makes her realize that little episode at Millward's shop had deep and meaningful consequences for poor old Eva Smith. And in this moment, her eyes are opened to what she's done, to just how selfish it was. And so we're clear, she was shopping for a dress at this fancy dress shop, Millward's, visited by the middle classes and the upper middle classes. The serving girl in the shop was Eva Smith, and Sheila was determined to try this dress on. Her mum said she shouldn't. Sheila, almost despite her mum, wanted to anyway, knew it didn't look good or it wasn't the right fit or colour. But the dress gets held up on the serving girl, who is very attractive and who the dress just fits, and it fits perfectly. Sheila is kind of consumed by jealousy and takes it out on Eva Smith and then threatens to get Daddy to remove the account they've got at this shop if this girl isn't sacked straight away. So she's using her power as the daughter of a wealthy client of the shop. She's using their status and their money, so the potential income that shop Millwards could get from the Burlings, as power over this working class girl. And this seemed to her fairly normal at the time, and she could perhaps be forgiven because this is how her father carries on. And this is the way he treats people. But when she realizes that was one episode in Eva's life that contributed to her downward spiral, she's overcome by this sense of guilt, has this deep sense of empathy for this young girl who's a similar age to her. And even though when finding out about the suicide, she's still quite superficial, saying, "Oh my goodness, was she pretty?" before she knew it was Eva Smith. That's the last we sort of see of the old Sheila. And when she knows what she's done and knows it's part of a bigger picture, she starts to mature really very quickly. And so by the time that Gerald has had his grilling, and it's turned out that he's had an affair with Eva Smith, and he's installed her in some rooms to sleep with her and have his wicked way with her, and then sort of dumps her when it suits him. Sheila's gaining a lot of maturity at that point. She's quietly becoming more self-confident. She handles that Gerald situation impressively. She doesn't sort of scream and shout at him and throw everything at him. She knows to trust herself, learns to trust herself a bit, because she suspected this. She knew this. She's not stupid. She might be sheltered and she might be spoiled, but she's not stupid. She suspected when Gerald was off for the whole summer, pretending he was just at the factory, that something wasn't quite right. And then she even is quite generous, quite magnanimous, you could say, towards Gerald, saying, "I don't hate you as I did an hour ago. In fact, you're slightly more impressive because at least you've been honest about something." So you see this identity, her identity, developing a bit as she starts to perhaps believe in herself a touch more and start to know how she sees things, right from wrong, and the like. She continues to be more impressive as she's sharp and she's quick on the uptake. And when Mrs. Burling sort of steams into the room, refusing to accept any responsibility or nothing to do with her, nothing you can do, blah, 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 Sheila realises very quickly that you shouldn't put up a big wall, the inspector, because he will smash it down. And the higher the wall, then the more he's going to smash down, more rubble you're having falling on top of you. She tries to warn her mother. Her mother is too hubristic and fat-headed, and so wades into this argument with the inspector. Lovely scene where Mrs. Burling is ramping up the pressure, saying, "Oh, you got to find this young man. You've got to go and deal with him. You've got to deal with the family. They're a disgrace. You've got to take responsibility." Before she realises it's her own son, Eric, who's got Eva pregnant, and the inspector's just waiting there, going, "Yeah, okay, right, we'll just wait. Yeah, we'll wait. Responsibility, okay, very public. Well, fine." And it's the dramatic irony there is quite a joy for the audience. But during that, Sheila realises that it's Eric who's the father, and realises their family's involvement with this girl has just gone to a whole nother level, and far earlier than Mrs. Burling realises this. So she's increasingly sharper than her parents, which is perhaps not hard in her father's case. But as this goes on, this self-confidence grows. She becomes more assertive. She speaks up for herself a little bit more. When they try to remove her from the room because they don't want her hearing certain things, she refuses, comes back in and says, "No, I'm here and I'm a person, thank you, and I want to hear this." And she challenges her parents a lot more, which is something she wasn't doing at the start. She was just accepting their received wisdom without question, without thinking of things for herself. This changes as she realises the errors of their ways and reflects more and more on what she's done. So by the end, she's the moral conscience of the play. She's the one who is accepting responsibility. Her and Eric seem to have this kind of, at the start was a sibling rivalry. They were arguing, they were calling each other squiffy, i.e. drunk, or chump, etc. At the end, they seem to be on a level with each other, closer with each other, and like the adults. And the adults are actually like the children. Mr. Burling, Mrs. Burling are the ones saying, "Oh, we've been hoaxed," or the younger generation can't even laugh at themselves, ha ha ha. Refusing to accept any responsibility like little babies, whereas the younger generation are the ones accepting responsibility and doing the adult thing. So there's a delicious bit of irony there. So by the very end, when the inspector's left, it's almost like his words and his ideas keep going through the character of Sheila. She starts to sound more socialist in her logic and her thinking and her arguments, starts to sound more empathetic, more capable of taking responsibility and being grown up about things. And yeah, really is that moral conscience of the play, and is perhaps that voice of Priestley coming through at the end. So maybe just another little insight. Often the names can be read into, there's lots of hidden clues in the names in spectacles. Less so with Sheila, I think. The only thing I could find was that Sheila is a Gaelic form of Julia or Cecilia from the Latin caecus, meaning blind. And then the only tenuous link there is that she's perhaps blind and ignorant at the start, but then grows up and sort of moves out of the dark and into the light. Now, I'd urge you the whole way through this play to look at the stage directions, often little adverbs before the lines are read, telling the actors how to read the line or play the role, and they're really they're really instructive in the case of an Inspector Calls. There's lots of little clues, little hints to be gleaned from them. So at the start, you see her lines are supposed to be said in a way that is gay, possessive, severe, excited, admiring, etc. And very much consistent with that idea that she's shallow, superficial, and privileged, and kind of ignorant. As the play goes on, you know, after that bombshell moment when she realizes what she's done, there's a change in her. She's alerted to the fact of her actions and the impact or the consequences of them. And she's starting to wake up a little bit. She's starting to get a bit more curious, perhaps questioning society or her family's behavior. And there's this burgeoning, developing, growing conscience within her. And these things start to have an impact on her. So towards the end of the play, you're in a completely different place. She really goes on perhaps more of a journey than any of the other characters. She's angry and she's upset, and this has had a big impact on her. But she's also had a big impact on her in terms of making her think about her actions, but also in developing her. That difficult thinking, that reflection, that humility makes people more impressive, because you have to have a look at yourself. Sometimes that's not easy to do, but if you can, you grow as a person. So by the end, she's assertive. She's much more self-aware. You might even say she's more woke and awake to the injustices and the troubles in that world.